People always said silence hides more than words. But that night, silence almost took someone's life. And if Mark, a single father, had walked a little faster, the woman in uniform, lying helpless on the cold sidewalk, might never have opened her eyes again. Mark had been returning from his late shift, dragging his tired body under the dim yellow streetlights. His jacket smelled faintly of machine oil from the factory, and his eyes carried the weight of long hours and unpaid bills. He adjusted the grocery bag in his hand and thought of Emma, his 9-year-old daughter, waiting at home. She never slept until he came back. He smiled faintly at that thought, but his steps slowed when he heard something unusual. It wasn't a scream, not even a cry, just a faint rustling, a breath that didn't belong to the night. He turned his head and froze. A woman lay slumped against the brick wall of a closed shop. Her police badge gleamed weakly under the streetlight, but her face looked pale, almost drained of color. Her lips trembled as if words wanted to escape but couldn't. Mark dropped his grocery bag and rushed closer. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice shaking, her eyes open slightly, fear hiding behind them. She whispered something, but her voice broke. "Don't talk." Mark's chest tightened. He didn't understand if she was warning him or begging him. His mind raced. Why would a police officer tell him not to talk? He looked around. Empty street, closed shops, nothing but shadows. Kneeling beside her, he tried again. "Are you hurt? Should I call someone?" Her trembling hand caught his wrist. Her grip was weak but desperate. "Don't talk," she repeated, her voice a strained whisper, her eyes darting toward the corner of the street. Mark turned his head slowly, his throat dry. But the corner was empty, at least to his eyes. "Okay," he muttered softly, almost to himself. He didn't want to scare her, but something about her eyes told him she wasn't just hurt. She was hiding from something, or someone. And in that strange silence, Mark realized he wasn't just a passerby anymore. He was standing in the middle of someone else's secret. Mark's heart pounded harder than the silence around him. He had lived through nights of loneliness, through moments when his daughter asked questions he didn't know how to answer, through the cruel laughter of debt collectors who reminded him of every dollar he couldn't pay. But this moment was different. This wasn't about him anymore. The woman before him, dressed in the uniform of authority, looked fragile, broken in a way that uniforms were never supposed to allow. Police officers were meant to stand tall, firm, ready for storms. Yet here she was, her lips pale, her breath shallow, her trembling hand gripping his wrist like he was her last anchor in the world. Mark swallowed hard. "I'm not going to leave you here," he whispered, careful to keep his voice low, almost as if he was afraid that the shadows themselves might be listening. He glanced down the street again, the corner where her eyes had flicked earlier. It was still empty, but something in his gut told him she wasn't imagining things. A police officer doesn't look that terrified for no reason. "Don't let them know," she forced out, her words breaking. Mark's brow furrowed. "Let who know?" He leaned closer, his eyes scanning her face. The streetlight flickered above them, making the night feel even heavier. Her lips parted, but she pressed them back together quickly. "Don't ask, please. Just..." She coughed, her shoulders shaking. Mark quickly shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're freezing. Listen, I can take you to the hospital. You need help. My car is parked just down..." Her hand shot up weakly and pressed against his chest, stopping him. "No, not the hospital. Not yet," he blinked in disbelief. "You could pass out any second. You need a doctor." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "If I go there, they'll find me." Those words hit him like a stone. Mark's mouth went dry. He tried to steady his breath, but questions swarmed his mind. Who was they? Why was a cop hiding? Why was she lying in the dark instead of calling for backup? Emma's face flashed in his mind. His sweet little girl, waiting for him at home, probably sitting by the old lamp with her homework, asking herself why her father was late again. He should have been there, telling her a bedtime story, making her laugh before she slept. Instead, he was kneeling beside a stranger with secrets deeper than his tired soul could measure. But walking away wasn't an option. "All right," he whispered. "Then tell me what you need. What do you want me to do?" For a moment her breathing slowed, and she closed her eyes. Then she whispered, "Just stay." Mark hesitated. The cold night seeped into his bones, but her words felt heavier than any winter. He stayed. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The street stayed empty, yet the air carried tension like a storm waiting to burst. Finally, she spoke again, her voice weaker but more urgent. "My name is Claire." She swallowed hard. "Don't tell anyone you saw me." "Not yet. Please promise me." Mark frowned deeply. "Claire, you're a cop. Why would I need to hide the fact that I saw you? Why can't you promise me?" She cut him off sharply, her eyes locking onto his. Despite her fragile state, that look carried a weight that pinned him in place. Mark exhaled slowly. "All right. I promise." Something in her softened at those words, like a weight lifting. But her relief was fleeting. A sudden noise echoed from the end of the street, the sharp slam of a car door. Mark's head whipped around, his chest tightening. The sound wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Claire's grip on his wrist tightened again. "Don't let them hear." "Who are you talking about?" Mark hissed under his breath. She shook her head. "Not now." The footsteps came next, 2 sets. Slow, deliberate echoing across the empty street. Mark's pulse quickened. He gently pressed Claire back against the wall, lowering his voice. "Stay quiet." The footsteps grew closer, steady, unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. Mark's stomach twisted. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't a man who picked battles. He was a father, a worker, a man who had already lost too much. Yet something inside him flared to life, a desperate instinct to protect. A shadow stretched onto the sidewalk before the figures appeared. 2 men walked into the dim glow of the streetlight, their jackets heavy, their faces unreadable. They didn't look around wildly. They looked like men who knew exactly what they were searching for. Mark forced himself to breathe evenly. He pulled his grocery bag closer, pretending to shuffle through it. His hands shook slightly, but he kept his eyes down, praying they would see nothing more than a tired worker heading home. One of the men stopped near him. Mark could feel the weight of his stare, though he didn't dare look up. The other man's voice broke the silence. "She was here." "I know she was." Mark's heart nearly stopped. Claire's body tensed beside him, her breath shallow. "You're imagining things," the other replied in a low growl. "She wouldn't be dumb enough to stay here." "Check again," the first insisted. His boots scraped against the concrete as he moved closer. Mark clenched his jaw. He bent down, pretending to tie his shoe, trying to block their view of Claire behind him. He prayed the streetlight's dim flicker would keep her hidden. The men lingered, their voices low but sharp. "If she talks, we're finished." Mark's chest tightened. "If she talks." His mind spun, piecing fragments together. Claire wasn't hiding from strangers. She was hiding from something inside her own world, something that had to do with her badge, her silence. The men finally stepped back, muttering curses under their breath. One spat on the ground. "We'll find her. She can't run forever." Their footsteps faded slowly into the night until only silence remained again. Mark's body sagged with relief, but his hands were still trembling. He turned back to Claire, whose lips quivered as she whispered, "You shouldn't have stayed." Mark shook his head. "And leave you here?" "Not a chance." Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time her tough mask cracked. "You don't understand. If they find out you helped me, your daughter—" She stopped, biting her lip. Mark froze. "My daughter? How do you know about Emma?" Claire shut her eyes, regret flooding her expression. "I shouldn't have said that." Mark's heart thundered, his mind racing in confusion. "What does my daughter have to do with this?" His voice rose slightly despite himself, but Claire pressed a finger to her lips desperately. "Don't talk," she whispered again, her voice trembling more than before. The same words, the same warning, but this time they carried a heavier weight, a threat that seemed to stretch far beyond this lonely street. And Mark realized the truth. Whatever secret Claire was holding wasn't just hers anymore. It was his. And somehow it was tied to Emma too. Mark felt as if the ground had slipped beneath him. Claire's words about Emma echoed inside his chest like a cruel bell. His daughter, his one reason for living, his one fragile anchor in this storm of a life, was suddenly tied to a secret he didn't even understand. He tried to steady his breath, but the thought alone was enough to shatter the fragile calm he had forced upon himself moments ago. His voice shook when he finally whispered, You can't just say that and stop. Tell me how you know about my daughter. Who told you? What's happening here?" Claire turned her face away, pressing her forehead against the cold brick wall. Her silence was louder than any answer. She looked weak, broken, her lips pale, her eyes shimmering with tears she refused to let fall. Yet even in her silence there was guilt, heavy, unbearable guilt. Mark leaned closer, his voice low but urgent. "Claire, if there's something I need to know, tell me. Don't leave me in the dark. If Emma is in danger," her hand shot out, gripping his sleeve. "Stop, you can't know." "Not yet?" He stared at her in disbelief. "Not yet? What do you mean, not yet?" "She's my daughter. I deserve to know if she's in danger." His voice cracked at the edges. "She's all I have." Claire's body trembled. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes the truth doesn't save people. Sometimes it destroys them faster than the lies." Mark shook his head violently. "No, don't give me riddles. I need answers." Her eyes flicked up at him, desperate but firm. "If you love her, you'll listen to me. Not now, please." The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Mark's fists clenched, anger and fear boiling together. But before he could push her further, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart skipped. He fumbled it out quickly, and Emma's name lit up the cracked screen. For a second, relief washed over him. She was calling, probably wondering why he was late. He almost answered, but then Claire's weak hand grabbed his wrist again. Her eyes widened with urgency. "Don't," Mark froze. "It's my daughter." "I have to." "Not here," she hissed. They could be listening. His stomach tightened. He stared at her pale face, at the sincerity in her terrified eyes. Against every instinct, he declined the call. The phone went silent, but his chest felt like it was collapsing under the weight of what he had just done. A few moments passed before Claire whispered again, her voice trembling. "They know things about you, Mark, more than you think. That's why you can't talk freely. Not on the phone, not even out here. Every word could be heard." He stared at her in shock. "How do you know my name?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, her silence screaming louder than any confession. Mark leaned back against the wall, his mind spinning. He wanted to run, to drag Claire with him, to get as far away from this cursed street as possible. But the thought of Emma's safety chained him to the ground. "Listen," he said firmly, though his voice trembled. "Whatever this is, whatever you've gotten yourself into, I don't care. You need help, and I can't just let you die out here. But you have to tell me how Emma is connected." Claire closed her eyes, whispering through clenched teeth. "I was supposed to protect you. That's all I can say right now." Mark's breath caught in his throat. "Protect him? From what? From who?" The weight of her words crushed his chest. His heart begged him to push her harder, to demand the truth. But before he could speak again, the sound of an engine hummed softly in the distance. Claire's eyes snapped open, panic flashing across her face. "Not again," she muttered. Mark stood quickly, scanning the street. Headlights appeared at the far end, moving slowly, almost too slowly. The car's silhouette was black, its windows tinted, crawling down the road as though it wasn't in a hurry at all. Claire's weak hand tugged at his sleeve. "Don't move. Don't let them see us." Mark crouched low beside her, shielding her with his body. His breath came in shallow bursts as the car rolled closer, its tires crunching over gravel. He prayed it would pass, prayed it wouldn't stop. But the car slowed near the corner, idling under the flickering streetlight. The hum of the engine lingered, its presence heavy and suffocating. Mark's throat went dry as he watched, his mind racing with every possible outcome. For a long minute, the car didn't move. The tinted window on the passenger side rolled down just slightly, and a faint curl of cigarette smoke drifted out into the night. Mark's skin crawled. He couldn't see the face inside, but he felt the weight of eyes searching. He pressed closer against the wall, pulling Claire with him. His heart thundered, his ears ringing from the silence that followed. Then just as suddenly as it had stopped, the car rolled forward again, vanishing into the darkness. Mark exhaled shakily, his body sagging with relief. But Claire's face told him it wasn't over. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Not until I'm gone. And now you're part of it." Mark stared at her, fear gripping his soul. "Part of what?" Her eyes glistened, her voice breaking. "Part of the reason I can't run anymore." He blinked. "You're not making sense. Tell me." She shook her head weakly. "I can't, not here." Mark's hands clenched at his sides. His every instinct screamed to drag her to his car and drive far away, to shield Emma from whatever this was. But the haunting fear in Claire's eyes told him distance wouldn't matter. Suddenly, Claire winced in pain, her body trembling violently. Mark panicked. "Hey, stay with me." "Claire, don't close your eyes." He shook her shoulder gently. Her lips moved, forming broken words. "Take me somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't watch." Mark's mind raced. Safe, where could that be? His apartment was the first thought, but the idea of bringing her there, where Emma lived, made his stomach churn. No, he couldn't risk Emma's safety. Then he remembered the old auto shop where he used to work years ago before the factory job. It had been closed down, abandoned, left to rot at the edge of town. Nobody went there anymore. Maybe, just maybe, that could be safe for a while. "I know a place," he whispered. "But you'll have to trust me." Claire's eyes met his, fragile yet desperate. She gave the slightest nod. Mark took a deep breath, helping her to her feet. She leaned heavily against him, her weight nearly collapsing them both. Step by step, they moved toward his car, parked at the far end of the street. Every shadow felt like a threat, every gust of wind like a warning. When they finally reached the car, Mark eased her into the passenger seat. He started the engine, his hands trembling on the wheel. As they drove through the sleeping streets, Claire's voice broke the silence one last time. "Mark, whatever happens, remember this. Don't talk about tonight. To anyone, not even your daughter." His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "You think I can keep this from her? She's my whole life. If she's in danger, I need to tell her." Claire turned her head, her eyes heavy with sorrow. "If you tell her, you'll lose her." Those words sank into Mark like knives. He didn't respond. He just kept driving, the abandoned auto shop waiting in the distance, while his world unraveled with every passing mile. The road stretched endlessly as Mark drove into the outskirts of town. Streetlights disappeared one by one, leaving only the weak glow of his car's headlights cutting through the darkness. The silence inside the car was almost unbearable, filled only by the hum of the engine and Claire's uneven breathing. Every time he glanced at her, she seemed weaker, her head leaning against the cold glass of the window, but her eyes stayed open, flickering with fear that never faded. Mark's mind raced faster than the car. He wanted answers, but every time he tried to ask, he remembered her words. "Don't talk." It wasn't just a warning, it was a command stitched into her voice with terror. He felt like he was carrying two lives now. His daughter's and this broken officer's, and both were hanging by a thread. Finally, the car rolled onto the cracked gravel road leading to the abandoned auto shop. Weeds had grown wild around the building, the roof sagging under years of neglect. Mark pulled the car behind the shop out of sight, his heart pounding as he killed the engine. He turned to Claire. "We're here." Her eyes fluttered open, exhaustion written across her face. "Safe? As safe as I can make it," he replied softly. Helping her out of the car, he wrapped her arm around his shoulders and half carried her into the shop. The heavy metal door groaned as he pushed it open, the sound echoing into the hollow darkness. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dust. Broken tools and old tires were scattered across the floor. He led her to an old couch, pushed against the wall, its fabric torn but still usable. She sank onto it, her body trembling, her face pale. Mark crouched in front of her, searching her eyes. "Claire, you need to tell me what's going on. I can't protect you if I don't know who you're hiding from." Her lips parted, but she stayed silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Please," he pressed, his voice breaking. "Emma is all I have. If there's even the smallest chance she's in danger, I need to know." Her shoulders shook as if she were fighting herself. Finally, she whispered, "It's not just about you. It's about what I found. What I saw. They know I can destroy them. That's why they're hunting me. And if you're near me, you're already a target." Mark's chest tightened. Destroy who? Her eyes lifted to his, filled with fear and shame. Cops, not all of them, but enough. The wrong ones. The kind who wear the badge, but work for men you'd never want to know about. Men who already know your name, your debts, your daughter. Mark's heart dropped. His debts, the factory cutbacks, the collectors who hounded him, the loan he had taken when Emma got sick last winter. How could they know all of that? He thought those struggles were private, buried in the corners of his small life. But if what she was saying was true, then even his struggles had been watched. "You're telling me there are cops working with criminals?" he asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. Claire nodded slowly. "And I was stupid enough to uncover it. Files, transfers, money that shouldn't exist. I thought I could report it, thought I could do my job." Her voice cracked. "But the moment I tried, I became the target." Mark rubbed his face, his stomach churning. "So now you're running, and they'll do anything to silence you?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Including using you, using Emma." The sound of his daughter's name again nearly broke him. "Why her?" "She's just a kid." "Because you're vulnerable," Claire whispered. "Because they already watch you. You owe money to men who answer to the same ones paying dirty cops. They know you'll do anything to protect her. That makes you useful." Mark felt as though the walls of the old shop were closing in. His entire life, his debts, his broken dreams, his nights of exhaustion, suddenly felt like threads in a web he hadn't even seen. And Emma was caught in it with him. He stood abruptly, pacing across the dusty floor. "This can't be real. This is insane. You're saying everything I thought was just bad luck was them?" Claire didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Mark's fists clenched. He wanted to scream, to punch the rusted metal walls until they gave way. But he couldn't. Emma's face hovered in his mind like a fragile light, and he couldn't let it shatter. Finally, he turned back to Claire. "So what now? You hide here forever?" "That's not a plan. They'll find you." Her voice shook. "I need to get those files out. The proof. If I can get them to someone I trust, maybe. Maybe I can stop this." Mark narrowed his eyes. "Do you have them?" She hesitated, then slowly pulled something from inside her torn uniform jacket. A small flash drive, scratched but intact. She held it out with trembling fingers. "This is why they want me dead." Mark stared at it, his pulse racing. Something so small, yet heavy enough to threaten his daughter's life. He didn't reach for it. He didn't want to, but Claire pressed it into his hand anyway. "Now you're part of it," she whispered. The weight of the drive in his palm felt like a curse. He wanted to throw it away, to hurl it into the shadows of the shop, but he couldn't, because if it was the only thing standing between Emma and danger, then he had no choice. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out quickly, and his breath caught when he saw Emma's name again. This time it wasn't just a call. A message lit up the screen. "Daddy, someone was outside the window." "I'm scared." Mark's blood ran cold. His hands trembled as he read the words again, his vision blurring. He looked at Claire, his voice breaking. "They're already at my house." Her eyes widened with horror. "Oh, God." Mark staggered back, his body shaking. Every second counted now. His little girl was alone, scared in the one place he thought she'd be safe. "Mark," Claire's voice was urgent, trembling, "you can't go straight home. That's what they want. They'll be waiting for you. They'll use her to drag you in." He shook his head violently. "She's 9 years old. I can't just leave her there." His voice cracked into a near scream. Claire grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. "Listen to me. If you walk into that house without a plan, you'll lose her forever. Do you understand? They're watching you, listening to you. You need to outthink them." Mark's chest heaved, his breath ragged. He had never outthought anyone in his life. He was a factory worker, a man who fixed machines and struggled to pay rent. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't a strategist. But Emma's terrified words on the screen burned into his soul. He clutched the flash drive in his hand, his jaw tight. "Then tell me what to do." Claire's eyes locked on his, her voice urgent. "We can't fight them with fists. We can't fight them with guns. The only weapon we have is this." She nodded at the flash drive. "If we can get it to the right hands, we'll have a chance. But until then, you can't let them know what you have. Not with words, not with fear. Silence, Mark. That's your shield now." Mark felt tears sting his eyes, his entire body trembling under the weight of her words. He wanted to collapse, to scream, to run into the night and hold his daughter safe in his arms. But the world wasn't that simple anymore. For the first time, he realized that silence wasn't just Claire's warning. It was survival, and as the night stretched around them, he knew the fight for Emma's safety had only just begun. Mark's hands trembled as he read Emma's message again. His mind screamed at him to run, to throw open the car door and drive straight home, but Claire's words echoed in his head like a chain wrapped around his chest. "If you walk into that house without a plan, you'll lose her. Forever." He pressed his palms into his face, forcing back the panic that threatened to choke him. His daughter's frightened eyes flashed in his imagination, her small hands clutching the old blanket she never slept without. She must have been sitting in the dark, staring at the window, waiting for him. And now there was someone outside watching her. "Claire!" he rasped, his voice raw. "If they touch her, if they so much as look at her the wrong way, they already have," Claire whispered, her words sharp but trembling. "You don't get it, Mark. They're not just standing outside your house. They're testing you. They want to see how you'll move, how desperate you'll become. If you rush, you give them exactly what they want." Mark slammed his fist against the rusted wall of the auto shop. The clang echoed painfully. "She's just a child. She doesn't deserve this. None of this." Claire flinched at his outburst but didn't turn away. Instead, she lifted her trembling hand and pointed at the flash drive still clutched in his fist. "This is bigger than you, bigger than her. But they'll make you believe it's only about her, because that's how they control you." Mark stared at the small drive, hatred burning in his chest. It looked so harmless, just a piece of plastic and metal, yet it carried a weight that could crush lives. "What's even on it?" he demanded. "Why does it matter so much?" Her lips quivered. "Transfers, records, payoffs, things that could tear apart people you see on the news every night. If the right eyes see it, it's enough to end their empire." She coughed, her body shaking with the effort. "But the wrong eyes will bury it, and us with it." Mark's chest tightened. He looked at her fragile state, her trembling body wrapped in his jacket, her badge dull against the torn fabric of her uniform. "Why me? Why drag me into this? I'm no one. Just a father trying to keep the lights on." Her gaze softened with something almost like sorrow. "Because no one suspects you. They watch men like you, yes, but they don't fear you. And that makes you dangerous if you're willing to act." Mark sank onto the edge of the couch opposite her, his head in his hands. His world had crumbled in a matter of hours. He was no longer just Mark, the factory worker, the tired father stumbling home after late shifts. He was now holding a weapon he never wanted, standing in the crosshairs of people who would gladly rip his life apart. His phone buzzed again. Another message. His hand shook as he opened it. "Daddy, I hear footsteps outside. Please come home." Mark's vision blurred with tears. His throat tightened so badly he could hardly breathe. "I can't sit here and do nothing," he muttered. Claire forced herself upright, gripping the arm of the couch. Her voice was thin but sharp. "Then don't do nothing. Do the right thing. If you storm in there now, they'll grab you both. But if we're smart, we can flip this." Mark turned on her, desperation blazing in his eyes. "How? Tell me how." She stared at him, her silence stretching painfully, before she finally whispered, "They think you're weak. They think you're predictable. Prove them wrong." Mark blinked, his breath uneven. "You don't understand. I've been weak my whole life. I couldn't save Emma's mother when she got sick. I couldn't keep the bills from drowning us. I couldn't even keep food on the table without begging for loans. What makes you think I can outsmart people who've been doing this for years?" Claire's eyes softened, glistening with tears she couldn't hide anymore. "Because this time you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for her." The words hit Mark like a spark in the darkness. His body trembled, but something inside him shifted, even if only slightly. She was right. For Emma, he couldn't afford weakness. Not now. He wiped his face roughly, his jaw tightening. Then we need a plan. If they're outside my house, I need to know who they are, what they want. I can't protect her blind. Claire hesitated, then pulled a small device from her pocket, a battered old police scanner. We can listen. If they're communicating, this will catch it. She handed it to him, her fingers trembling. Mark turned it on, static filling the air until faint voices broke through. He adjusted the dial until the words grew clearer. He hasn't shown yet. Kid looks scared. She keeps peeking through the curtain. Mark's blood ran cold. That was Emma, his little girl, terrified in her own home. His hands clenched the scanner so tightly it creaked. Another voice followed, calm but cruel. Good. Fear makes her father sloppy. When he comes, we'll take them both. Orders are clear. Mark nearly dropped the device. His entire body shook with rage and terror. He turned to Claire, his voice breaking. They're going to take her. Not if you stay ahead, she said firmly, though her voice was weak. We know what they expect now. They expect you to run home. Don't do the opposite, Mark's chest heaved. The opposite? She nodded. Make them think you're not coming. Make them panic. Panic leads to mistakes. His head spun, the weight of her words battling against the scream in his heart, telling him to drive straight to Emma. But deep down, he knew Claire was right. If he rushed in, it would be over before it even began. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. Then what do we do? Claire leaned back, her strength waning. First, we buy time. Then we use their own greed against them. They don't just want me gone, Mark. They want the drive. As long as we hold it, we have leverage. Mark stared at the flash drive in his palm, the object that had turned his world upside down. Leverage. The word felt foreign on his tongue. He wasn't used to holding power. He was used to being stepped on, overlooked, ignored. But maybe, just maybe, this little piece of plastic could turn weakness into something else. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Emma. It was an unknown number. He hesitated before answering, his heart pounding. A deep voice filled his ear. Mr. Davis, you're late, Mark froze. They knew his name. You've got something that doesn't belong to you, the voice continued, smooth and threatening. And we've got something that does. If you want to see your daughter again, you'll listen carefully. Mark's knees buckled, his grip tightening on the phone. His voice came out hoarse. If you touch her, the voice chuckled coldly, don't waste your breath. Words won't save her. Actions will. You have one chance to trade. Her life for what you're holding. Refuse, and she disappears. The line went dead. Mark's hand shook so violently he almost dropped the phone. His eyes darted to Claire, who was watching him closely, her face pale but her gaze sharp. They called, he whispered, his voice broken. They want a trade. Claire closed her eyes, whispering, that's what I feared. Mark staggered back, his chest heaving. What do I do, Claire? If I give them this, I lose the only chance to stop them. If I don't, I lose Emma. His voice cracked. I can't choose between saving my daughter and saving the truth. Claire's voice was soft, heavy with sorrow. Maybe. You don't have to choose. Mark blinked at her, confusion flooding his tired eyes. What are you saying? She opened her eyes again, their glimmer filled with both pain and resolve. Sometimes the only way to win against people like them is to give them exactly what they think they want. Her words hung in the cold air, and Mark realized she wasn't just talking about survival anymore. She was talking about sacrifice, deception, and a plan that would test every ounce of strength he had left. And in that moment, as fear and determination clashed inside him, Mark understood one thing with painful clarity. This night wasn't just about saving Emma anymore. It was about deciding what kind of father, what kind of man he truly was. Mark sat frozen in the dim glow of the auto shop's broken light bulb, the unknown voice still echoing in his ears. His whole body felt like it was on fire, but his hands were ice cold. The phone slipped slightly in his palm, slick with sweat. His mind screamed at him to run, to break every rule Claire had given him and storm into his house. But Claire's fragile voice snapped him back. Mark, she whispered, her breath shallow. Look at me. He did. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her gaze carried the sharpness of someone who had stared at monsters for far too long. "You can't go to them empty," she said. "They'll take her anyway." Mark's jaw clenched. "Then what do I do?" "They've got her, Claire. My little girl is in their hands. Do you know what that feels like? To imagine your child crying in a dark room, surrounded by people who don't care if she lives or dies." His voice cracked, anger and grief colliding. Claire closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back tears of her own. "Yes, I know exactly what it feels like. That's why I'm telling you, we can't play by their rules. If you do, you'll lose her. But if we play by ours, maybe you'll get her back." Her words didn't comfort him. They terrified him, because in her eyes, he saw something deeper, something that hinted at a plan far more dangerous than he was ready for. Mark pushed himself off the couch, pacing the oil-stained floor, running both hands through his hair. "So what? I'm supposed to trick them? Do you even understand what kind of people we're dealing with?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. "Better than you think." Mark stopped. "What does that mean?" Claire's silence hung heavy. Finally, she opened her mouth. "The man who called you, the voice you just heard, I know him." The words stabbed through the air. Mark's pulse spiked. "You... what?" Her hands trembled in her lap. "He used to be a cop. Like me, only he didn't wear the badge for the same reasons. His name is Garrett. He was on the inside for years, feeding them information, making sure cases disappeared before they reached the courts. He wasn't just corrupt, he was their shield. And now he's their weapon." Mark's skin crawled. The thought that his daughter was in the hands of a man who once swore to protect families like his made bile rise in his throat. "So you're telling me this? This Garrett knows every move the police would make. He'll see us coming from a mile away." Claire nodded weakly. "Unless we make a move even he wouldn't expect." Mark exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "And what exactly is that?" She looked at him with tired but steady eyes. "Give them what they want without giving it to them." He frowned. "You're not making sense." Claire motioned for him to bring the flash drive. He handed it over reluctantly, his knuckles white. She held it in her fragile hands, turning it slowly between her fingers. "They think this is their key. But they don't know. I made copies, hidden ones, places they'll never find. If we hand them this, they'll think they've won. And while they celebrate, we still hold the truth." Mark's breath caught. "So, you're saying we let them believe they've got everything, when in reality, they've got nothing?" "Exactly." Mark's eyes burned with a mix of fear and hope. "But what if they don't keep their end of the deal? What if they take this and still keep Emma?" Claire's expression darkened. "That's the risk. And it's a risk you'll have to take. But at least with this plan, you have leverage. You don't walk into the lion's den empty-handed. You walk in with something they think is worth more than your life." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark's heart pounded against his ribs, each beat echoing in his ears. He wanted to scream, to punch through the walls, to shatter the weight crushing his chest. But he forced himself to nod. "Fine," he whispered hoarsely. "Tell me what I have to do." Claire outlined the plan, her voice breaking at times, but her mind still sharp. Mark listened, every muscle in his body tense. When she finished, he stared at her, fear gnawing at his gut. "If this goes wrong, I lose her forever." Her eyes glistened. "If you do nothing, you lose her anyway." The truth hit him like a blade. He picked up his phone again, his fingers trembling as he typed a single message to Emma. "I'm coming for you." Hold on, he didn't know if she'd even see it. But he had to believe she would. Hours crawled by like years. Mark followed Claire's instructions carefully, retracing streets, switching cars, keeping his movements unpredictable. Each minute away from Emma shredded his soul, but he forced himself to trust that every step was a step closer to her. Finally, his phone buzzed again. A new message from the unknown number, Midnight Pier 17. "Come alone." Mark stared at it, his pulse roaring. Pier 17, the abandoned dock at the edge of the city. A place where no one would hear screams, where the waves drowned out secrets. Claire's breathing grew shallow as she whispered, "It's him, Garrett. He chose that spot because he knows the shadows there. Be careful, Mark. He clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with resolve. I don't care about shadows. I just care about Emma. The night swallowed him as he drove, the roads eerily empty. His hands gripped the wheel so tightly they ached. Every streetlight he passed flickered like it was watching him, reminding him how thin the line was between hope and despair. When he reached the pier, the air was damp and heavy, the water below restless against the old wooden posts. A faint fog curled along the ground, cloaking everything in ghostly silence. And then he saw them. Two men stood in the distance, their figures tall and unyielding under the faint glow of the dock lamps. And between them, Emma. Mark's heart nearly exploded. His little girl stood there, her small hands tied in front of her, her eyes wide and wet with tears. The blanket she always carried was nowhere to be seen. She looked lost, broken, terrified. "Daddy!" she cried the moment she saw him. Her voice pierced the night, tearing through his chest like a blade. Mark stepped forward instinctively, but a familiar deep voice stopped him. "That's close enough, Mr. Davis." From the shadows, Garrett stepped into view. His hair was slicked back, his suit too polished for a night like this. His smile was the kind that didn't touch his eyes, sharp, mocking, predatory. "You've caused quite a stir," Garrett said smoothly. "But it ends tonight. Hand it over and you walk away with your daughter. Try anything else and—" He tilted his head toward Emma. The unspoken threat hung heavy. Mark's blood boiled. Every instinct screamed at him to charge, to rip Emma free, to end this nightmare. But Claire's words held him back. "Don't give them what they expect. Surprise is your only weapon." His hand slipped into his pocket, fingers brushing against the flash drive. His heart pounded. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. He lifted his gaze, meeting Garrett's cold eyes. "You want it?" he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "Fine, but if I give it to you, I want proof she walks away first." Garrett smirked. "You're in no position to make demands, Mr. Davis." Mark's jaw tightened. "Maybe not. But you're in no position to risk losing what I'm holding either." He lifted the flash drive slightly, just enough for the dim light to catch it. For the first time, Garrett's smile faltered. His eyes narrowed. Mark's heart thundered. He had no weapon, no backup, no guarantee. All he had was a lie and a hope that it was enough to keep Emma alive for one more night. And as the fog thickened around them, he realized this was no longer just about survival. This was about outsmarting a man who had built his life on deception, and the night was only just beginning. Mark's breath clouded in the damp night air as he stood across from Garrett, Emma trembling between the two men. Every muscle in Mark's body begged him to run forward, to scoop her up and never let go, but he forced himself to stay still. He remembered Claire's words, "They expect you to break. Don't give them what they want." Garrett's cold smirk widened as he gestured to Emma. "This isn't complicated, Mr. Davis. Hand me the drive and she goes free. Refuse and she disappears like smoke." Mark's throat tightened. His trembling fingers brushed the flash drive in his pocket. For one agonizing second, he considered throwing it over and ending this nightmare. But then Emma's frightened eyes locked on his, and he saw something deeper: trust. She trusted him even in her terror. She believed her daddy would save her. That belief gave him courage. "I'll give it to you," Mark said, his voice steadying. "But you'll let her walk to me first. I want to see her take 10 steps, alone." Garrett chuckled darkly. "Still bargaining, are we?" He waved his hand, signaling his men. "Fine, 10 steps." Emma's bonds were cut and she stumbled forward. Her legs shook, her little hands clutched at the air as she moved toward her father. Each step felt like a century. Mark's heart pounded louder than the waves crashing below the pier. 9 steps. She was so close he could almost touch her. Then Garrett snapped his fingers. The second man yanked Emma back roughly by her arm. She cried out, the sound tearing through Mark's chest like a blade. "Did you really think I'd let this be that easy?" Garrett sneered. "No, Mr. Davis, you don't set the rules." "I do." Mark's rage boiled over. "You promised." He roared. "I promised nothing," Garrett said smoothly. "But I'll give you a choice. Toss the drive now, and maybe she sees the morning. Or keep playing games, and you'll watch her fade from this world tonight." Mark's hands shook around the drive. His eyes burned with tears. He was seconds away from throwing it when a weak but fierce voice echoed across the pier. "Don't!" Mark turned in shock. It was Claire. She had dragged herself from the car, pale and barely standing, but her eyes blazed with fire. She clutched the railing for support, her body trembling violently. "Don't give it to him, Mark!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "If you do, Emma's gone forever. He won't let either of you live." Garrett's eyes flickered in surprise before hardening. "Persistent little cop," he muttered. "Should have finished you earlier." Mark's head spun. Emma's life, Claire's warning, the weight of the flash drive in his hand, it all collided in a storm of fear and desperation. He knew he had seconds to decide. Then suddenly a memory flashed in his mind. Emma's small voice at bedtime whispering, "Daddy, you always keep your promises." A surge of clarity hit him. If he gave in, he'd break that promise forever. He couldn't teach his daughter that fear was stronger than truth. Mark straightened, his shaking hand tightening around the flash drive. He looked Garrett straight in the eye. "You'll never get this," he said, his voice raw but steady. "Not from me." Garrett's smirk vanished. His eyes darkened with fury. He motioned sharply to his men. "End it, now." But in that split second, Claire stumbled forward, her last strength pushing her into the line of fire. She shoved Emma out of the man's grip, screaming, "Run, Emma, run!" Emma bolted toward her father, sobbing, as Mark dropped to his knees and caught her in his arms. Relief and terror crashed through him in equal measure. Gunshots shattered the night, but none hit Mark or Emma. The police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Claire had managed to hit the emergency signal on her scanner before collapsing. Backup had come. Garrett's men scattered like rats, but Garrett himself froze, his eyes burning with hatred as officers swarmed the pier. He was dragged down, handcuffed, his threats echoing into the fog. Mark clutched Emma tightly, his tears soaking her hair. "I've got you, baby. I've got you," he whispered over and over. She buried her face in his chest, her little body shaking. Beside them, Claire lay on the ground, her breath shallow. Mark rushed to her side, still holding Emma. "Stay with me, Claire, please." Her lips curved into a weak smile. "You did it, Mark. You didn't break." Her eyes shifted to Emma, glistening with tears. "Remember this, sweetheart. Your father, he fought for you. Never forget that." Emma sniffled, nodding against her father's chest. Claire's hand slipped from his grasp, her eyes fluttering closed as the paramedics rushed in. Mark's throat closed as he whispered, "Thank you." The night was finally over. Moral lesson as Mark carried Emma away from the chaos. He realized something he would teach her forever. In life, people will try to break you with fear, but real strength is found in holding on to truth. Even when it costs everything, a father's love can't be bought, threatened, or silenced. It stands unshaken against the darkest nights. And sometimes, even in the face of betrayal and loss, courage is simply keeping your promise to protect the ones who believe in you.